call the meeting to order. Recognize that tonight's meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Sunaymo people. Before we move on, I want to acknowledge that today is World Teacher Day, the 50th anniversary, and the theme this year is valuing teachers and improving their status. And look, I have this whole thing typed out about what I should say, but I think actually that what I should say is that this board really wants to recognize that this year is a tremendous year for our teachers. They are doing a lot of work with the new curriculum, the reporting order, and we're asking a lot of them. And this board appreciates deeply their professionalism, and I really think that we should recognize that today, of all days, on World Teacher Appreciation Day. So,
Hear, hear.
thank you for this day and all the work you're doing to this year, because it's a big year for our teachers, and the results of all the hard work will benefit our students in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to recognize that we have a new member at the table. We have Jamie Smith from QP. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm secretary. I've been with the district. I've also been an EA. I've been with the district for 10 years. I'm QP's general vice president and have sat at the education meetings previous years.
Excellent. Well, we welcome your perspective at the table. Thank you. Any additions tonight? Deletions? Any changes in order? Any objection to approving the agenda? Seeing none. Any objections to approving the minutes from the last Education Committee meeting? Seeing none, we will approve the minutes and move right into our presentation for this evening. Learning Services is going to have Superintendent Blaine and Ms. Laura Tate to talk about all the changes this year that I was just talking about.
Well,
We can't wait.
I'm going to quickly turn it over to Laura,
Okay.
and she may call upon me in the odd place, but
Absolutely.
I'm going to do it.
Just go ahead. So, hello everyone. Do you want this, Laura? Sure. Thanks. I'm sort of seeing my presentation tonight, or our presentation tonight, as a bit of an update. I've come to speak to you already about the ministerial order and sort of what that entailed. If you need to back up, I can do that. But one of the, I guess, the key message I want to communicate tonight is that with regards to reporting, that the 2016-17 school year, we hope to be a year of exploration, a wonderful year of exploration and investigation, and for educators to get in and get their hands dirty and feedback out to us what is working and what's not. So what do we need to utilize to feed future policy and procedure, and what do we need to let go of? So I want to make sure that's clear, and I'll probably try and say that a couple more times in the next little bit. The pencils. These are my little pencils that I care about. The pencils are basically sort of illuminating a bit of a journey for us and looking at sort of the end in mind. Essentially, if you can reflect back on when I came and spoke to you last time about reporting, there's two key pieces when we talk about reporting. One is summative, and that's what we're used to, right? That's those, we're used to seeing a report card, for example. That's a written summative report. And and the other piece that we also do when we think about reporting is this ongoing piece where we look at a learning journey and we like to take snapshots or take a peek through the window throughout that learning and that growth journey, and we turn those ongoing. And we, during a parent-teacher interview, for example, a teacher might sit down with a parent and have an actual conversation about their child's learning. What I know about your child, what I know about your child's learning, and where we might go next, and how I'll support your child, for those next steps, how you might support your child at home for those next steps. That's a little snapshot, or that could be defined as one of those ongoing communications of student learning versus a summative piece at the end. Just really clear about those two definitions because we have been wrestling and we continue to wrestle with those definitions as we go through this. So the pencil on the left is round about where we are now. A little bit more of an emphasis on that summative reporting. Currently, that's kind of the vibe. It has been for about 7 years or so. Kind of that summative piece with a little bit of ongoing communication. If you look all the way to the right pencil, that last pencil, could be June 2019, could be whatever, we're kind of putting some time frames on there, but it's somewhere in the future. We really would like to decrease that summative assessment piece and increase the occurrence of the ongoing communications with parents. And what that might look like in between, as I said, as it being a year of exploration, we're going to learn as we go along, and like any good educator, we formatively assess as we move along with anything. And so the two pencils in the middle sort of reflect that time in between. Now this year, 26-17, we hope, one of the attempts, and when I walk you through the guidelines a little bit more, you'll see that what we're attempting to do is to grab at least a bit of a balance so that we decrease summative reporting a little bit maybe and increase the ongoing a little bit, so you can see the second pencil is kind of a half-half kind there. And that's sort of the goal for this year. So, I shared with you a little while back the order, and that order has been shared out so far. And then in the summer, prior to the order being actually officially released, I pulled a bunch of teachers, they gracefully came in, and we worked over the summer a little bit to create some kind of model or template or some kind of an idea that, kind of sort of proactively before the actual order came out, we did some work ahead of time, just in case. And then once we had the order, I pulled in some principals and vice principals, and we ran the model by them, had their thoughts in it. I've very quickly had meetings with the superintendent, with the president of the teachers union, with DPAC, and all these things are happening, trying to keep people informed, but it's all happening quickly as well, and we're responding quickly. And we have had then a number of meetings with principals and vice principals. We've had an internal communication letter from the superintendent and the president, the NDTA, go out both internally and externally. So the communications and that journey so far have been that we have let folks know that an order has come down from the ministry, and NLPS, how we are sort of, how we plan to respond to that order has been communicated in a whole bunch of different ways so far. So we have created, and with many, many edits and changes, and it's an ongoing, as you can see, it says there's an official working copy of basically these guidelines. Now you'll remember that the ministries offer districts two options: an option where things sort of stay relatively status quo with the addition of the student self-assessing of the core competencies, and then they've offered this other option that we can drive many Mack trucks through. And so it is that open option, which the ministry is terming an interim option, that we have built some guidelines for. Just to refresh your memories, the ministry has stated that we could essentially offer gradeless K to 9 with one summative assessment at the end of the year, and then of course the inclusion of the core competencies self-assessment, student self-assessment. So feeling that was a beautiful offer of an option from the ministry, we've attempted to build some guidelines to offer far more support than that option did, which is what I'm assuming the ministry's intention was. Please interrupt me at any time. So what I have for you here, and I'm really just skimming the surface, I'm trying to give it to you in a bit of a nutshell, are the NLPS interpretation of the ministry's interim guidelines. You'll see that these guidelines is K to 7 on the left and 8-9 on the right. They are almost identical, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I need to walk to the. So here, this portion here talks about that ongoing communication student learning that I referred to a little earlier, and this piece here refers to the summative reports. In the pencil, you saw the ongoing and the summative. This is the ongoing with a little bit more detail, and the summative with a little bit more detail. So what we are suggesting is, in terms of ongoing communications of student learning, that occurs a minimum of 3 times throughout the school year, and that one of these 3 can be that parent-teacher conference, or that parent-teacher interview, or student-led, or 3-way interview, however you want to word that. And the other 2 criteria need to meet a minimum requirements for the curricular areas. Also, they need to meet 4 criteria that we have created. That's sitting here for you. It's a whole bunch of detail. That we've created criteria so that if we're going to have a parent-teacher conference, or we're going to have an ongoing communication, maybe in the form of a portfolio or something, we've created criteria that we've begged, board, and steeled from around the province. Lots of people have been doing this for a number of years. So we've taken from all the best that's out there. And so we've built criteria for these ongoing communications. And then the 2 written summative reports. The ministry only requires 1 at the end of the year, but again, just to support the structure a little bit, we are recommending that there's a January snapshot and then a year-end summative report. That's K-7. 8-9 is exactly the same. And then I have this little tiny caveat there at the bottom. And that caveat really speaks to the complexity of our secondary schools across the province. Whether they be structurally complex or culturally complex, all of those things. And we know that just their sheer size and the sheer structure, they are going to have a different kind of set of challenges that an elementary school might have. Therefore, we state that here's this K-7 or K-9 structure for you with these criteria here, but we also know that your context is important and that we want to support you to make sense of all of this within your context. So soup to nuts there at the secondary level. There's all manner of things occurring at the secondary schools, and we want to support each secondary school individually to make sense of these reporting guidelines and know where their staff is, know where their parent community is, and support them along the way.
How are you doing that?
Currently, we're at the very beginning phases. So the first way that we're doing this is we are creating all sorts of these kinds of structures. So we have a starting place. And then Scott Saywell and I are currently meeting with each individual secondary school principal to have these conversations. Where are you at? What can you handle? What is your plan currently? Where are you at currently? Where would you like to be in the next year? Where would you like to be in the next 2 years? One of the pieces that we've communicated clearly to K-9 is that the pencils remain the same. Those pencils are the same whether it's an elementary school or a secondary school. How the secondary schools might get there is really going to vary a little bit, and we want to support them in that, but they know very clearly that that end pencil is the same. So we're creating the same kinds of structures. We are working with them to support them to create those pieces, and then we are then working with those principals to work with their staffs, to coach them, to work with their parent communities, to inform them, and all of those pieces. There's lots of questions that I won't have the answers to. And a lot of that is because we're trying to be really genuine about this year of exploration. And I could very easily sit in a room by myself, and believe me, I do this, and create all sorts of rules and mandates. So that it would make it a lot easier, and we could just kind of move through this, but we know that's not going to make it easier, that we need people to contextualize it and for them to figure it out for themselves so they feel invested in it. And they're the ones that do the best work. They're going to inform the system. So we really are trying to be very true to that year of exploration, or 2 years, or 3.
So I hear that. I think that's awesome that you guys are doing that. I also know that before this ministry order came down, you had jobs that took a lot of time, and principals had jobs that took a lot of time, and now we're adding this huge piece of work that could actually be, I think, a full-time job on its own. And it sounds like this is a lot of work for everybody involved, including our teachers who are struggling, with all of these new concepts and new curriculum and everything. It just sounds like it's a lot.
Yeah, and we're hearing that. And to add to that a little bit is the K-9 curriculum is brand spanking new. This year's the first year that it's being put in full force formally. At the secondary level, it's the draft curriculum, so it's even newer than that for them. And that's a whole bunch in terms of knowledge and awareness around these different content areas and courses that are being offered, but they're having to build schedules and course choice, pamphlets and such now. It is a lot. So just a real quick piece that we built a summative report, and the summative report would have been known as a report card. It's very similar to the report card that we have now. The front sheet, a lot of these pieces are almost exactly the same. So when a teacher looks at this document, it's going to look extremely familiar. What we've done here, and most everybody in the system we're familiar with our performance standards. We have scales that are the performance standards for BC have used language such as not yet meeting expectations or exceeding expectations. Many folks have difficulty with that language, so we've changed the language, but in essence, it's basically a 4-point scale, and we're asking that teachers kind of rate the learning in the curricular areas on this sort of 4-point scale, which again is a very familiar practice for most teachers. So as I mentioned, we have been working with internal staff, whether it's a communication to let folks know what's going on, and then we're slowly bringing different groups of people together. As an example, next Wednesday, October 12th, is that next Wednesday? We are bringing together principals, vice principals, and their INID teachers to once again go through all of the information I've just given you, but far deeper. So we're looking at how to define ongoing communications, looking at the criteria, bringing samples of work to know, or samples of potential communications, and walking through some of these pieces. So we're attempting to give different learning opportunities throughout the system, and that's just one example. We did the same thing on the last Thursday's Pro D Day, for example, and we'll be offering. Also, we have a Thursday learning series that we ran last year on Mondays. In that as well, a lot of learning opportunities. And parent communication, we've sent out, of course, the formal written communication to parents. We are requiring that every single administrative team hold local information sessions at their schools. And this would be in addition to a PAC type gathering or a PAC meeting. This really is meant for PAC and then the parent community and the family community as a whole to come in and hear about these changes. And then in addition to that, at their management level here, we are organizing and facilitating district-wide learning opportunities, not only around the reporting, but just setting that stage around the changing world and the curricular changes and how that reflects and how that affects reporting. So we're out there communicating these pieces and allowing ourselves to be available too for those Q&As and some of those individualized questions. John, do you want to add anything to that part?
As trustees mentioned, and I think the piece that we're trying to be sensitive to, and we'll never meet the standard of expectations around the communication with parents and teachers and just everyone. And this transition is something that'll carry on for, we're probably not going to get it really just working really good for 5 or 6 years. You have to remember and realize that the system we're evolving from is a system that's been in place for years. And so you get very good at that over time, practice. And so we need practice and time and input and opportunities to change. We met with PACs. We've been trying to simultaneously keep people up to speed, but at the same time, just in the DPAC meeting that we had, a lot of people want to get a lot deeper than we're even ready to, and to maintain that flow and that really wanting information from the ground up, and to take those pieces, those important pieces from teachers in, we have to be respectful of all sorts of things. So our piece was to PAC and parents and et cetera, don't light your hair on fire here. As Mike has said, with me standing up together, take a deep breath, and we'll walk through it and take advantage flexibility, and that we want to give you and extend to everybody to move along with us, and we'll work together on that. So the work that's being done, and I have to say, you asked how we are doing some shifting. Our learning services is far more independent operating right now. They're really focused on the schools and et cetera, where the rest of the staff is trying to pick up the other things to allow that to happen. Laura and her teams are working incredible hours, and it's not the important thing, and I think this board appreciates, is the fact that we're working together with all the partner groups and moving forward in that regard. And when you do it that way, it comes out that the end result is far, far better and greater than where we'd be, possibly what we've seen in the past. And it'll take us far. There's lots of good work, but there's a ton of work to be done as well.
I have a couple questions, starting with Trustee Bob.
Sure. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's nice and simple, trying to take something that's very complex and putting it into some presentation. And I know that the letter that went out was very complex, and I think difficult for some parents to really comprehend, because it's so new. But I think to myself, my question is just really trying to look forward into the future and sort of try to get an idea of what kind of messaging are we going to be giving to parents that might be concerned about how is this going to affect my application or my child's application to university, and how do we as a district, or how do we kind of prepare for that, because it's going to be coming. Those kind of questions are going to be coming, and I kind of want to know what the messaging is.
On a sort of ideological places, in LPS, we would endeavor to sort of never do anything that would lessen the chances for any of our kids to be successful in anything that they choose, right? So with that, when we talk about gradeless, as we will learn, and I'm still learning, I'm still really learning about all of this myself as well. When we think about gradeless, we are moving toward it. It's not even about gradeless. Sorry, let's just take that right off the table. Let's talk about learning, and then feedback and assessment that's really moves the child's learning forward in a really effective manner. Reporting is something we need to do. It's an accountability piece that goes on. It's been given a lot of, I think, playtime, and it probably has a greater, I think, existence in our education system than it really needs to be. It's not something that supports a child's learning. I get it that we need it out there, whether it's post-secondary or what have you. But I think right now, if we could frame it as it's K to 9, it's a healthy way, it's a healthy part of our education system, teaching and learning. Currently, the 10 to 12 is not in question around this. Our 10 to 12 is our graduation program. That is not changing, right? That is not in jeopardy in any way, shape, or form around the gradeless. And like I said, us as a system, we would never put our children in jeopardy in any way, shape, or form to make them any less competitive out there in the world, the post-secondary world, or the training, or whatever it is they pursue after high school. But try to keep in context that this is K to 9, and that our 10 to 12 graduation program is still fully graded.
I'll just add something to that as well, just in terms of our post-secondary institutions being aligned with this change. The ministry didn't make these changes in a vacuum. There was 2 provincial advisory groups, we call them AGPAs, an advisory group for provincial assessment, and these tables, had everybody from pre-K all the way through. They called it the pre-K to 16, because it included representatives from all sorts of post-secondary as well. Teachers were at the table, people were at the table, everybody. And one of the reasons why this wasn't rolled out, K to 12, is so that universities can spend the next 3 years as well making the necessary adjustments to their teaching and learning, so that they're ready to receive our students. So this is something that's been done with the K to 16 partnership in mind for many years. It's been developed, all those questions and all that. Those groups worked hard to make sure that it was seamless for the students when they move on. So they're expecting a change, and that's why there's this shift for this time, for 3 years. Trustee Brzovic?
Thank you. Christy, can you please give me that last slide, the previous slide for a second? No, one more, with the actual, one more, sorry. That one, thank you. Where it says, one of the three can be the parent-teacher conference. I guess, what are we gonna do? As I was listening, because I've heard this presentation, I think I heard a more detailed version last Thursday at the DPEC meeting. I am completely philosophically in support of this. My concern is what about the parents, the kids whose parents, for whatever reason, don't participate. They don't go to parent-teacher. They just wait for the report card to come home. And, you know, and I don't wanna see a system be put in place where somehow teachers are gonna be punished for that. Because my spidey senses get tingling as I read this stuff. And think about conversations I've had with educators in America, in the States, where that's exactly what's happening. And that could be the, you know, and I mean, we can't do anything, but we have no proof of that yet. But, I don't know, I'm just putting it out there as a question. Have they said anything about any of that yet, about parents who don't attend?
I mean, I don't know that that changes from the same way they're doing things now, or that we have been
Okay.
doing for the past 7 years. You know, report cards go home, or parent-teacher conferences are offered, or phone calls are made, and parents may or may not be either receptive or available. And teachers do their very best in all that milieu and the busyness, and they follow up and they do their due diligence for sure, but that isn't going to change,
Okay.
right? I mean, it's, we still will have those pieces where we will send pieces home and we will communicate, and they may or may not be responded to. Even now, we send report cards home at the end of the year, we don't know if parents actually get them.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I don't see that shift too much.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if anything else, it just opens a bit of a window for parents to see that the assessing and the feedback occurring sort of in real time, and it's allowing for a lot more student voice, so that we're focusing on students being aware of their own learning, the metacognition around what I know about my learning and how I learn best, so that they can report out on that, and that has a huge effect size, and that affects their learning hugely. So I'm not really seeing too much difference at the minute around that parents or
Okay.
sort of teachers maybe being in trouble.
Okay, yeah, because, I mean, I was actually gonna wanna have more discussion about that today, but I think it's too soon. But I think it's something I would like to keep. I'm gonna keep in the back of my mind. We may wanna just talk about more as we learn more, because I don't know, and something's making me nervous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trustee Ray?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I think the biggest challenge that is in front of us is education of the parents. You know, really, and I'm really glad to see that, you know, we're working together with our partner groups and DPAC to try to figure that out. I mean, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but ignorance breeds fear, and you know, if we don't have if we're afraid of or don't understand the process, people get afraid of it. So our challenge will be to make sure that the parents and all interested parties, we can learn together through this. So I guess my question is, we obviously have started that process, but that will be a top priority, correct?
Absolutely. We can't not make it a priority. They're involved, they're vocal, right?
Right, thank you.
How can we, you know, real and meaningful change is messy and hard and chaotic, and, you know, you talked about this being a 5 to 6 year process, which I think is really important for people to understand. You know, like, there's not an expectation this year that everybody's full on with the new curriculum, and that by the end of June we have this, you know, we're gonna take this past slowly, but how do we reassure the students in the system and the families that we're gonna maintain rigor throughout this process of, you know, chaotic change? And I say chaotic because I really think that real change comes, you know, is hard and messy, but how do we assure our families, or we need to probably make it a priority that rigor is not?
Well, I think one of the ways is the communication, for sure, and the education. The other thing is, I don't know if you've noticed, but the change that we're talking about for this year, if we I'll frame it this way. We currently have, or last year and prior to, 5 reports, and we still have 5 reports. I think that is one of the ways. They're going to take it slow. They're going to see that the rigor is still there in as much as they think that the reporting system now that we have is rigorous. It's only, I believe wholeheartedly and from the bottom of my brainstem that this is a good thing, that's a better way to go. So I'm hoping that if we take some small steps and we continually have our key messages, the key messages are really important, and we are constantly working on the education and the communication. Particularly this year, we take small steps and we allow people to contextualize and move slowly. I think those are a couple of ways that would certainly support that. And I really want to emphasize it's like we haven't, we're talking about it differently. We're talking about a mindset. We're talking about, what's the other word I'm looking for? Mindset, this kind of shift in our paradigm. That's the big piece. This will work itself out. This is a whole different way of looking at teaching and learning and assessing and reporting and relationships with parents and relationships with students and relationships with parents and students. That's the mind shift, and that's the beautiful part. That's the part that's going to take a little while. Right? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the major shifts here is this is not an isolated piece of change. This is a system change provincially, and so one of the things that we need to work on is just going back to some of the basics we've talked about. We need to build capacity, and so there are several different venues to do that. You know, building the common language is what Laura's talking about. So having that repetitive language from K to 9 in every environment that we have, we built, and we've got some practice around that with the RTI and self-regulated learning and a strategic plan. Those were all uncommon pieces of language to this district. Access to information is a new world, and when we talk about parents that have not connected or get the report cards in, it'll look very, very different in the next 5 to 10 years on how teachers or parents will be accessing information and students. And the big thing that I just mentioned in the sense of it's provincial. If you haven't noticed, the ministry communication tool that they've got out there right now, their plan is out there. There's advertisements on TV regularly. As much as I get a chance to watch the news at night, you know, the advertisements are there when they're talking about the curriculum, they're talking about new nuances. So parents will engage when all of a sudden it means something, right? And if we have created enough of the different communication tools for them at that time, they will access it and try and dig in. And then when they ask those questions, hopefully we'll have the information of the simplistic forms to inform them to build our capacity. And capacity is only built one person at a time. And so it starts at this table. From this table, it branches out. You know, we met with Deepak, Mike. We all have our different networks sitting out there, and we just need to keep building our common language. And that's the only way it's going to happen.
Trustee Robinson?
Yeah, as the superintendent said, we've been kind of sliding in this area for the last couple of years. Darlene Crane spent at least 1 year, if not 2, talking about assessment with a team, and that conversation spread through the whole district, and other such things. When I go out to visit my schools, I always go at lunchtime and sit in the teachers' lunchroom and get a chance to talk to them about what they're doing. They can yell at me if they wish. They haven't yet. But I have seen no sign of hair on fire. If anything, teachers are overwhelmed. Teachers have been overwhelmed as long as I've known teachers because we overwhelm them with work. But they're taking this in stride. I feel that's in the schools that I've had a chance to visit. So I think we're doing a good job of not forcing this on anyone. Everyone is doing their bit. I think we probably have 5 or 6 years to go, I agree, but we're going.
Do we have a spot on our, and you mentioned this in all of our various ways of communicating out, do we have a spot on the homepage with a link, you know, new curriculum, new reporting order, and having, you know, the ministry, like we talked about, they have some really great informative links, and like a link to Jan Unwin and her TED talk about the new curriculum, who doesn't fall in love with that? You know, having somewhere where it's right there and easy for people to access to see that this change, you know, some reading for those who want to read and stuff like that, if we don't, or.
It's all being built as we go, I don't know if,
It's being built right now.
As we speak.
We have the information we can share, through the chair, sorry. We can share that information that we gained, which, for example, links to the ministry site. We can share the letter to the parents. We can share the letter from the Minister of Education. And of course, our basic information, like you see on the screen right now, that's all available. And we can have it on the website shortly. Like I said, we're working on it right now.
Awesome, thank you. Trustee Brooke?
Thank you. When do we see, and first of all, I want to be clear, I think you've done amazing and wonderful work, and my concerns aren't about you, they're higher up. I want to be
Oh,
really,
there's a higher up.
you know,
No one higher than you, Laura.
No one, yeah, my concerns are at the ministry level, because I'm always a little cynical, and I always wonder if there's an agenda I'm missing, we're missing. With these info sessions and that, do we have a sort of idea of when those will start?
Yes. So the schools have been asked to complete all of their local sessions by October 31st. And the first two larger district-wide sessions are November 1st and November 8th. 2 per day. Want to talk about, a little bit more about that vision, Tom?
Sure, that kind of dovetails right into what we talked about. So, as Laura was just saying, that we've got the info sessions occurring in the schools and et cetera, and our Department of Learning Services, these are very tentative dates so far, but we're looking at November the 1st and November 8th, Tuesday, that we would do, and we haven't even talked to anybody about this, but the learning services component would be in the afternoon, probably a school-based workshop with students and SIPAC parents, et cetera. And in that evening, we would do a community workshop, and in that would be an info session, again, talking about today's world in education, the reporting order, and the new curriculum. And at that same time, you're well aware, and you'll be receiving this, I'm hoping to have it to the board for next week as kind of a tentative timeline of the things we'll be melding in, then the Mike McKay work and community searching out and district zone vision facilities and partnerships will be going on, and then he will kick in towards the end of November, so there'll be really a full month of integrated work that will be being done with our communities. And at that same time, we'll be the plan is to tie in our framework for learning and survey that'll be common for all of us, and key questions, and to gather the indicators so that we can begin to involve that in the decision making as we assure and secure a strategic plan, and B, begin the 2020 vision for learning, which leads us into the 3-year budget process that we've been talking about. So we've tied it all together. The dates are really insignificant, I think, today for the board, other than they are in the works and plans. We still have a lot of work to do. It was just today that I asked Learning Services, could they possibly put these presentations together to the public by the 1st of November? Because, you know, there's a lot of work being done, and but they came to the plate and said they want to do it. So we'll kind of plan it around that. So it's a full engagement of the entire community.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, one.
No question. Once the questions are over.
Oh, once questions are over, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For that, I get to have a little closing comment as a parent who has a child in kindergarten. My most favorite part of this is the student reporting. The fact that my little guy is in kindergarten and is expected from now all the way through grade 12 to talk about his own learning and understand his competencies. I just think that is so exciting that this is a conversation with our students. I feel really lucky that my child is starting in kindergarten right now, and under this system where he will get to talk about his learning. And I think there's a lot of scary stuff, but there's a lot of really awesome positive stuff coming out of this. So we all just have to embrace the change. Embrace the change. Thank you for your time. Mr. Ball?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good thing that your child may well never get graded and ranked and feel like they're going through school knowing where they sit in the class as opposed to knowing how they're going to, how they feel about their learning.
Understanding everything.
I think the dovetailing piece into the universities, I think the universities have already said they're moving away from that, from the grades as an entrance. We're hoping it won't be an entrance exam, the same as they have in the States, but nonetheless. I have a request for the board. The timing of the order in August was problematic. And as both the superintendent and Ms. Tate have said, they've had to do an awful lot of work in August and September. And presented this to teachers last week. So here we are now in 3/4 of the way through September, heading into October, and we're getting a change. And this was one of the biggest things that changed in this district, I believe, in the last 3 years, was that we haven't had these changes coming in September. And the impact of this on top of the, I'll use the word revised curriculum rather than new curriculum. The impact on teachers has been immense. And, you know, due respect, Bill, but there is a lot of angst out there. And teachers will manage, and it will be fine, and they'll get through it. And with the right support from the district, it'll work. But my request is that this is a temporary order, and there's indications that a more permanent order, or I don't believe it will be the final order. I think it's an ongoing process. In my mind, I don't think we'll see it permanent order the same way we've seen for the last 15, 20 years of one type of reporting order, would be that the ministry, that you urge the ministry to bring this out in early spring. So the district has time to deal with this, and all districts have time to deal with this in the spring, and so the system knows where they are when they leave off in June. If I've got a job in September, I know where I'm going, and I know what I'm going to have to do for it. It makes the job a lot easier. Coming in September and having this change is immense. So I would request to the board, write and urge the ministry to do that, and through other organisations as well, through whatever organisation you can.
Can I ask you a clarifying question on
Sure.
this? Okay, I'm listening.
Okay.
Do you mean the next order?
Yes.
Because the writ drops on April something, right?
Yep.
9th or something, so there's not gonna be a government starting.
But the next order could come out in January or March or even April.
Which is the spring, and that's what you're requesting.
My request is that this not be left until after that April election, going into May with the dropping the writ.
Okay.
Because that will just put more chaos in the system, and it's unnecessary. I believe that most of this order was written well in advance, and that most of these details were out there. It's just that they chose to hold on to this, and whether by intention or otherwise, and I'll try and hold off my political choice there slightly. They have to understand that they can't cause this much chaos in the system across the province without having impacts on everybody.
Yeah,
I have a clarifying question for you. I'm wondering if your request to the board is backed up by a stance that the provincial BCTF is taking. I'm wondering if they're applying similar sorts of pressure to the ministry.
Indications are we will be, yes. And we're hoping that all partner groups or groups associated will do the same.
Trustee Brzovic, you were on the list, sir.
I would move motion to move forward with a letter voicing concern to the ministry about the late rollout of the order and requesting that they be more cognizant of, how am I trying to word it? Trying to take all that into a, yeah. Somebody help me. I'm trying to not have it be really, really long. Move that the Board of Education write to the ministry expressing concern over the late delivery of the order and requesting that future orders be done prior to the end of the school year for so appropriate planning as possible. Does that work? Does that meet your intent, Mike?
Motion, yes.
Does anybody have more clarifying questions before we move to
Okay.
a motion?
It's a recommendation.
Yeah.
It's a recommendation, yeah. So we'll do clarifying questions, and then, yeah, there's two, and then we'll come back to this.
Okay.
Okay, just so that people can get the information before we move into the recommendation. Trustee Bob?
Just a question to those who attended the Vista gathering. Was there any discussion of that at the listening meeting?
Not this specific one, but the broader issue of orders from the ministry and changes coming late. Like, for example, in the transportation, that came up, and a few of the other things.
The drive-by funding.
Yes, and the change in capacity utilization, that one came up.
Trustee Solomon?
Through you to Mike, do you see any major drawback? It sounds like you're asking us from our district to forward a letter, and but there's the potential of a provincial from the BCSDA, and I coming forward in terms of this concern. And do you see a drawback in us awaiting that push from the provincial body and us supporting it at that point?
I think you'll deal with it the way you need to deal with it, whether it's through your provincial body or as individual boards. I think you'll need to have that discussion amongst yourselves and decide which way is the best way. I just need, as a teacher, I need to know that pressure's being placed to have this not happen again. And I don't care how it happens.
I respect your sentiments and I appreciate them very much. I think that there might be other ways that we could raise that issue, and I don't feel that at this time. I'm guessing, I'm not sure, because the motion hasn't been pushed forward. I want to explore ways to raise the issue.
Charlene?
Thank you. Through the chair, I would agree with Mr. Ball on this topic, because when we're receiving a letter from the minister, I think I got this today, saying that they're gonna share their plan next June and collecting feedback until February. That is their plan. So if we wanted something sooner than that to help prepare for next year, so we're not going into September scrambling to do all of these meetings and keeping everybody up to date and opening up the communication with parents as well. We need more time to plan for that. So I think it would be helpful if we could help encourage them to move their timeline.
Any other clarifying questions before Trustee Brozovich moves her recommendation? Yeah, so Trustee Brozovich, you've had time to work on the wording a little bit, and
I think
Seconder?
I'm getting there. The Education Committee write to the Ministry of Education to voice concern regarding the late delivery of the order around the grading changes and request that any other changes in this area be delivered in a more timely manner prior to
The writ?
the writ being dropped. So we have time to prepare.
Just a point,
Okay.
the recommendation that the board.
Okay.
It's a recommendation.
Education committee.
Yes, thank you. That's what the part I keep tripping on.
Is there a seconder for this? Trustee Brand
Just to get it on the
seconds.
table.
Yeah.
Okay, do you
I'll
want to
speak
speak to it?
I think it's a legitimate request from our partner groups. I hear from Charlene, from Ms. McKay, that DPAC has the same concerns. And it's a consistent pattern from the ministry to send information or make changes or make decisions at a late date that makes it more difficult for us to implement, our staff to get their work done. It adds extra pressure on our staff. And I think it's unnecessary, and I think it's frankly disrespectful to our staff. And I think we need to send the message to the ministry that it's not okay. It's not fair, it's not right.
Mr. Brandon?
What exactly are we asking? I'm slightly confused. The timetable is, this year is such that we are beginning the new assessment process, right? So, and I'm unclear on standardization from school to school, from subject to subject. That'll be an issue, I'm sure. You know, what's a B here, what's a B there? No, now we don't have Bs. So what is sufficient acquiring of the knowledge and skills between subjects, schools, etc. That's a huge task to do just by itself. So what's the next step that the ministry is going to put upon boards and teachers after this initial, you know, K-9 has been rolled out and adhered to, designed, developed, monitored? What is the next step? Because we're asking for a delay in the next step, so I would like to know what it is. Because I'm appreciative and sympathetic with the teachers and parents wanting to get used to this first step before we proceed to the next one. So what is the next step? What is the ministry intending? What do we feel the ministry is intending to do that we don't want them to do right now?
So, yeah, I'm gonna let Laura respond, and I'm not gonna make us go through all the formal processes, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. But I'm suspecting that the ministry has offered the province this option A that I shared, which is that really broad with the one summative and the grade list. I'm inferring from that move that they are putting that up, casting that net out to the province, and they're watching what districts do, and they will, like we will, garner all of that experience and that feedback to then inform a more permanent order. They were very clear that this option A is an interim temporary order for 1 year. And so my guess is that they wouldn't have put it out like that if we weren't moving that direction. That's the first thing. And my assumption would be that they're going to garner from the districts all the best practices and use that to inform what the more permanent order will look like.
So Chair, I support this recommendation because looking forward, I see there is going to be a period of chaos once the election starts and once it ends, and a time when there will be an assessment either with the new government or re-election on what they're doing and what they want to do next. So I think a pause is going to be useful. It will give this district and the other districts a chance to kind of assess how well they've done in rolling out this new assessment process and do our own evaluation. Right? So I think it is worth avoiding the conflict, confusion, and chaos of election time while we do our own work.
So I'm a little confused, so I'm gonna ask a clarifying question here, because I think the motion is asking for a compressed timeline, so that we actually receive the order before the end of the school year, so that.
Before the writ was what.
Right, and I'm hearing from you that we're talking about
And
a
I'm
pause.
I'm arguing for a pause, so I'm not, I was misapprehended
Okay.
of the intent of the motion, and also, I guess, Mr. Wilson.
Oh,
So you had a clarifying question, which
Right.
is.
Are we
Trustee
talking about a
Berzovich
pause, or are we
moved
talking about?
the motion? So let's have Trustee Berzovich answer the question since she moved the motion.
the point in moving the motion is getting information in June to implement in September for the coming, in June for the coming school year, and certainly getting information in July and saying you're gonna implement in this current coming school year is far too much pressure on the system. If they were gonna announce this as they did in August, it should have been for not yet September, this 2016, 2017, it should have been for 2017, 2018. So we had a full year to have all these conversations, and, it's Ms.
Can
Tate
we just get a
and-
clarification? Were you talking about before the writ that you want the order, in your letter, or were you talking about having the order wait until after the election? Because that's what trustee Brennan
Okay.
thought and Scott thought it was before, and we're just seeking clarification.
And then I guess I'm looking for clarification from Mr. Ballentlander as to what, because I'm trying, from what I thought.
Can we just, did you get the motion?
This is what I have. The
Yeah.
Education Committee recommends to the Board of Education, School District 68, they write a letter expressing concerns to the ministry regarding their late delivery order around grading changes, and request that future orders be delivered in a timely manner prior to the writ dropping.
Okay, maybe we should take that last part of, in a timely manner, in a manner that allows for adequate planning.
I think I should make a recommendation that
Let's do
perhaps
that.
we table this,
Yes.
Okay.
seek some clarity,
Okay.
and bring it back at another time.
Okay.
I think that whether the letter goes, you know,
This
at
month or
the end
next
of
month.
this month or at the end of next month is not gonna make
Yeah,
a big.
okay, let's do that.
Move to refer this matter to the next education.
Thank you.
Thank you, and between now and then, maybe we can all see some clarity.
Okay.
Okay, seconded by trustee Bob, moved by trustee Brennan. All in favor of referring to next ed committee? Thank you. Opposed? No opposed. Thank you. All right. Do you have anything else from Living Services for us?
I'll wait for new business, I'll put it in.
So, moving on to new business.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, the timeline is that you deal with this and how you deal with it, I don't mind. And, I mean, speaking to trustee Brennan's point, if a final order was another year on, and districts were given 2 years to work on this, it wouldn't matter. The timeliness is the issue. So if it was not next August and it waited till the following March, it really wouldn't matter as much. It's the implementation during the school year that's critical to us.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. We have some new business. I had, when I was on my travels a couple of weeks ago, I was in Delta, and they had what they were referring to as a fentanyl forum, and it was a community forum put on by their local health authority in partnership with the school district and the RCMP, and it was an information session, and it got me to do some digging, because I was very confused and concerned about the rates, and I think there's been, according to the coroner service, since January 1st, there has been 488 illicit drug overdose deaths to the end of August from January 1st. It's a 61.6% increase over the deaths occurring the same period in 2015. And if we remember that trustee Solomon brought this up to us last spring, when this was first becoming an issue, and we heard at that time we happened to have DeHa here, but this Dr. Hasselbeck was here. This issue has not gone away. It continues to be a big epidemic across our province, and I just would hate for us to be reactive instead of proactive. So I asked if we could get an update on this issue and what we're doing in our school district to educate our students about harm reduction.
Mr. Essinger, he spoke with me today because it's a short report. And we are in communication with Dr. Hasselbeck, and as of, I think 2 days ago, the last conversation we had, we're awaiting Island Health. The connection between Dr. Hasselbeck, Island Health, and us is we're working on what the next best steps are for us. We want to ensure that the right information for the island is there at the same time. It's our full intention on moving forward with something, but in conjunction with our other partner groups as we go through. Lots of conversations are happening out there right now. We just need a little bit more time to ensure that we do it properly.
Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, there was an article today where a school trustee, I can't remember what district, suggested that the anti-overdose medication be available in each school, much like EpiPen. And I think we should take that seriously and assess whether it is practical. I guess I'd like to know what, and when I was young, we had this course called Health and Personal Development, and it was about growing up and facing all those life challenges, such as alcohol and drugs. And I guess I'm wondering what we are currently doing in schools that provides our students with an awareness of the danger of certain substances. I used to work at the alcohol drug program, and we would go into the schools, my colleague and I, and we would present information about various substances. And I'm not sure how effective it was. You know, these one-off things aren't usually very effective. And Scared Straight isn't very effective either. It's short-lasting, in fact. But I think it is important that we provide our students with information about the risks of use of certain drugs. Fentanyl is used in medical procedures at the hospital, but you don't know what you're getting when you buy it off the street, and it is hugely dangerous. And I think there's been about upwards of 600 deaths this year caused by it. I know years ended in August.
That was up to the end of August, yeah.
And so I think it would be useful to first of all examine what we're doing in schools now, and at what grade levels, and perhaps assess how effective it is. And working with the chief mental health officer, I think is a good idea to ensure that we're getting the facts right. But you know, when you see mothers sort of saying, "I didn't know my 16-year-old daughter took one fentanyl or one pill she thought was going to make her happy, and it made her dead," that's very concerning.
You wanted to respond?
Yeah, and thank you, both trustees. As you covered many different complex issues in that with parents, students, education. I know we have presented scope and sequence of the healthy career planning and et cetera, what students get per grade to the board here as recently, I think, as last year. So we can pull that out for the trustees to be able to have a look at it. Our counselors are trained in those different pieces as well. Whether or not they are specifically up to date in the last 6 months, I can't speak to that, but it's amazing what kind of conversations occur in those classrooms when an opportunity arises. And the other piece is that it's a community issue as well, and so we really need to take our lead in my thoughts with Dr. Hasselbeck and what we can do in a full collaborative way to ensure that the information is being shared. So I think we can supply what the board is looking for and in a very timely way.
Trustee Ray?
Thank you. Just to dovetail on what Trustee Brennan said, I really do think the education is really important, but I think it needs to go a step further, and not just the students, but the parents as well. And as Trustee Brennan said, it is right, you know, I had no idea my daughter or son was involved in this kind of thing, and maybe signs to look for, and even using our liaison officers, and I don't know how that works with the RCMP, but more effectively, I know in the hockey team that I coach, a midget boys, which is age 15 to 18, we have at our next practice, one of our liaison officers coming to speak to the boys in the dressing room about just this subject. And so maybe we can take that opportunity on a regular basis to have our liaison officers speak to our students in the school and be, like you say, proactive about this instead of reactive. So I think it's very important. Thank you for bringing it up.
Myself next, and then Trustee Sullivan, and I think I agree with what Trustee Brennan was saying about looking at what we're doing in terms of drug awareness and education in schools. But I think that there's two separate streams here. One is to address that to make sure that it's modern and current and up to date for the current issues facing our students. But the other one is that there's this really immediate issue happening, and I don't disagree that the one-off forums may not be the solution. And I'm not even sure that that's what we should be doing. I encourage our staff to work, like you said, with Dr. Hasselbeck, but to do something and to do it quickly so that we are educating our students on harm reduction. I mean, just to make this real, in Delta, there was this story about 9 people in one night who overdosed, and there was five people doing this, using together, and one person decided not to use that night. And it was four of his friends who overdosed on it, and if he had used, the story would have been a very different ending. So making sure our students are aware and educated in harm reduction and safe using to make sure that we avoid these types of tragedies happening and being proactive about it. So The BC Centre for Disease Control has a take-home kit. It has a breathing barrier mask, syringes, alcohol wipes, and 3 doses of naloxone. And I don't know if we can get that kind of information out to our students who are choosing to do this, because this isn't about, there's many steps through this, but I think getting our students through this current crisis alive is important as well. So I think we should use this as an opportunity to be broad-based, but also very thorough and quick in our reactions. Trustee Solomon.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything that's been said, and I think obviously it is an ongoing issue. Nothing's really dramatically changed in terms of experimentation. I mean, kids have been doing this for a long time, experimenting with this, that, whatever. The difference now is that we have something out there that if they experiment one time, they might die. And that's the issue right now. And so coordinating with as Superintendent Blaine, with our partners to get information. Absolutely, it's part and parcel of what we need to do to assist our kids to understand what's out there. That's good. It's important.
Trustee Kilmer?
So this is much larger than just the school district and students within our purview. It's a societal issue, and it's an emergent societal issue, and as people have pointed out, it needs to be dealt with in a multi-pronged approach, and I can speak a little bit to that, because as a firefighter within the last year I've undergone naloxone training, so we are now have a protocol for naloxone, and apparently the RCMP do as well. And this is an issue that hits close to home, because I have a woman who lives on my street whose 23-year-old daughter just died a couple weeks ago from this. So this is, I think, one person here, I don't know, but I'm sure the school district will be putting out a communication effort in this regard. And I think that we can also lean on fire departments and RCMP to help broadcast the message to these young, vulnerable students.
Trustee Paul?
Yeah, just some comments. Just really wanting to see that communication effort going out into our school district, but also to determine who's the expert in our community and invite them to come in and talk to us and see what we can do from there.
Trustee Robinson and then Trustee Brzovic.
Yeah, I have every confidence that our staff is on top of this, moving in the right direction and moving as quickly as they possibly can. So I believe this, we should leave it with staff, and confident that they will move this forward as quickly as possible. I would love to see the naloxone, is it called?
Naloxone.
Available in our schools, but I'm sure that's high on the priority list of discussion with our staff.
Trustee Brzovic.
Thank you. I too have confidence in staff in this. I do have a question probably for Mr. Blaine through the chair. Have our child and youth care workers had any recent updated training around fentanyl, so that they're aware of it, signs or concerns?
I'm not sure how recent it is, but I will get that also addressed.
Yeah, because that to me seems as,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and I think just in response to that one of the things that's important to remember is that, it's what Trustee Solomon just said, this isn't about kids having an addiction to fentanyl.
No,
It's about
of course
kids doing what they've always done.
No.
But right now, we have an epidemic that's affecting people at a higher rate than has ever been seen before. And just making sure that we are, making sure our kids are aware. And, it is a community issue, and we should work with our community, but I also think that we have a very focused clientele that we should be dealing with within that. And we know where our responsibilities lie. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any other questions for Trustee Blaine on this issue?
We'll get that.
Okay. Sorry, Trustee Blaine.
Motion.
You love that.
It's a salary.
We're saving money.
Sorry. All right, question period? No questions today?
Oh, sorry, I had one other point.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Just under new business, I know the board is interested in some general enrollment. I know you're actually interested in a lot more than general. But we plan on bringing a more in-depth conversation to the business committee next week. The end of this week, Friday, the 1701s and our echo checks are completed. So that's the last confirmation for our current enrollment for this year, going back and forth to the ministry. So these are still not solid numbers. But we are certainly up in elementary. We are up a little in secondary as well, both from projections and from last year. We are still working on our the alternate and learn at home, and our designations are still. That's where our clarity is lying as far as cleaning up between now and Friday. But we'll have solid numbers for next week, and we're very pleased at where we're at. As the board is aware, we took we had to disperse some monies for staffing to ensure all the students at the divisions and their receipts and et cetera. We did that. We're now doing the evaluation from our staff as to the supplemental support systems that are required that we didn't put out right away. So we'll look at that, and we'll give you a very, very high level on funds that will be that are determined from the additional enrollment, and some thoughts around that as well next week. So we are up, we're solid. We're not worried about paying for the extra funding that we've already put in. We're well above that, so we're in good shape.
Trustee Robinson?
To the superintendent, I believe you mentioned in an email today or yesterday that the numbers at Barsby were down, and I understood from Deb Marshall that they were up.
My comment, so there's some of the difficulties. The numbers from last year's enrollment, Barsby's down because of the opening of Cedar and the transition of students. And they were up from the projections that we put in place.
So through the chair, if I might answer, being the VP at Barsby. Ms. Marshall did come in at 650, that was our projection. We started in September on our first day with about 672. There's been some shifting back and forth between Cedar and us and MD and us, but when all of the dust has settled, as of Friday, I believe we were at 651, and so that's what we would be coming in at, and that's what Ms. Marshall projected back in the spring.
Do you recall what your enrollment was last year? 770? Something?
I wasn't at Barsby
Yeah.
last year, and I don't know. Sorry.
It was up there. So that was my
I
comment.
tried the Woodlands, but.
Yeah, under the bid.
Wasn't the question.
Yeah. Based on the two numbers that you're looking at is where we were last year in that building.
Yeah.
Right, as compared to
So I
projections.
misunderstood.
Yeah. So there's actually less students in Barsby than there were last year, right? But above or meeting our projections for this year.
We knew we were losing them to Cedar. They wanted to go home.
Any other questions for the superintendent, not the trustee, on this issue? No? And still no questions? Okay. Somebody want to move that we adjourn?
I'll move adjourn.
Trustee Burzovich moves, trustee Robinson seconds. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.